So, hello everybody, it's Owen Turner from United by Design as part of York Design Week. We're here with Karl Mok from Lab Design, and we're recording for the Sunday sessions as part of York Design Week, which will be going loud and proud to hopefully a whole host of different people. And Karl has very graciously agreed to come and talk to everybody, which is great. So welcome, Karl. How are you?
Good, Owen. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. So, Karl, I'd like to obviously hand over to you, but if you could just introduce yourself and what you do, that would be great, just to give a bit of context to the talk.
Sure, definitely. So my name is Karl Mok, and I am the founder of Lab, and we're a Newcastle-based spatial practice. So my background's in architecture, which I'll go into a bit more detail later in the conversation. But my practice sort of tries to merge the boundaries, and we try to work intersectionally between all the different spatial practices, whether that's architects, interior designers, graphic designers, or any really sort of like design field out there. So my talk is entitled "What They Don't Tell You in School," and this pretty much relates to my own personal experience founding Lab 2 years ago, and kind of just what sort of just like lessons I've picked up along the way that they don't tell you at school.
Fantastic. Really excited to hear this. So yeah, crack on, and hopefully we can catch up either through the presentation or at the end. Thank you, Karl.
Perfect. Thank you, Owen. So just a bit more about background about me is that I'm originally from Malaysia, and this was kind of the last holiday picture I took when I was out there, and this is kind of how I like to remember it, really. And so this was actually in the east side of Malaysia, the Sabah. I'm not from there. I'm actually from the capital, which is a lot less idyllic than this, but this is kind of how I like to frame it if anybody asks me. And my background is that I first came to the UK and to Newcastle in 2011 to study architecture, and kind of just really got involved here and never really left. And I did bits of work experience back home, and I came back for my master's as well. But it was just a really like, obviously I kind of really just fell in love with like Newcastle as a city, and obviously the university was really, really supportive and helped us with our own startup journey. So that was great. But just some of the work experience that I've done before, and maybe what's led to my sort of like me founding Lab, and perhaps what's led up to the reason why we've done what we do now, is that so I come from background in architecture, and obviously, you know, when you go through a course like architecture, you think that you're going to be doing architecture all your life. It's a very long one, as some of you may already know. So after I finished my degree in architecture, which was 3 years long, I went back and I got involved with a couple of practices, did a lot of really big projects, really cool, lots of high-end bespoke stuff. That's all really cool. But then one of the work experiences that I did, because I was just, you know, I was never really satisfied with what I was doing at that point. And one of the work experiences I did is the one that you see on the screen right now. And this was with Epic Homes. And they're a non-governmental organization that works very closely and aims to bridge city folk with rural areas in Malaysia. And because there's a big disparity between the two. So you have really high levels of poverty in rural areas, even though they might be just like bordering the city areas. So a lot of rural people would, or people who live in, you know, pretty much, you know, virgin jungle, would come into the cities to work and, you know, bring back whatever pay they have, but still not be able to come home to things such as running water or electricity or any of those modern conveniences that we're used to. And so this was something that obviously I did speak to me at the time, but I never really kind of understood how much it meant to me until after, when I reflected back on it. And obviously the aim of this was sort of make that bridge, that connection between, you know, a group that's really served by design, you know, like city folk being, you know, having our homes, our houses, any sort of like, you know, convenience that we have already designed for us by professionals. and a group of people who would probably never have had access to that kind of thing. To them, design was stuff that was built by their own hands, or something that they had a very much an active role in making. And what I found through this experience, obviously we were going there thinking that, right, perhaps we were the privileged lot, perhaps we were the ones who were bringing some sort of good and all that. But really what we were learning is that there was a lot that we didn't know perhaps about building in this environment. And actually this sort of like became the foundation for everything I aspired to do later on, in that everything that we did was a collaboration. There was never really a one-way conversation. It was always a dialogue. It was always about talking about would this work, we don't know this, can you advise on that and all that. So it was really free and open, and that was what I really enjoyed about my time at Epic Homes. And obviously I just worked in a lot of jobs. That was not the only one, trust me. And what I found really interesting when I actually came out to open my own practice was obviously the idea of getting paid. And when you open your own practice, you become a lot more aware, you become a lot more sensitive to these ideas, like how do you actually get remunerated for what you do. And obviously a really good quote that I've heard about designers in general is that we would do what we do anyways for free. So that is a really, in a sense, that's a really difficult mindset, because you're entering a profession where you're really, really passionate about what you do. You obviously feel really strongly. I hacked away, I stalked away in university for 5 years. I came out and worked for another 4. And I was just really passionate about what I was doing. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to found my own practice was because I wanted to carry on doing these projects that I saw were really beneficial. I thought not only am I passionate about them, but I could see them bringing a tangible benefit to the community. And then to actually come out on the other side and then learn that there were all sorts of practices in industry. We've all heard this before, getting paid in marketing. And as a startup, we were very eager to just get our foot out there, and perhaps we were a little bit too eager, and that became the grounds for exploitation. And then we went off, we did a lot of things. So originally I founded Tar Lab with my partner, who is unfortunately not part of this enterprise anymore. But we originally had a really strong idea about, right, how can we go about this? And perhaps a lot of our interest to begin with was surrounding branding, and how architects, is design professionals, could better brand ourselves, because what we sensed was that there was a real disconnection between us as a profession, architects namely, and say the common man or woman on the street. And we thought that that was not something we wanted to advocate. We were all about trying to open up the profession and the practice to to multiple avenues of conversation, whether that was among the design community or if that was with eventual end users. So we did our thinking hats on, and we created these fun little templates. These, what you see on the screen right now, are the TAR tiles. So TAR was always meant to be a cute little acronym. And at the time when we started off, we said, right, it stands for tangible amusements. Of course, this got messed up along the way, and sometimes we end up people saying like, oh yeah, you're the T architects or something like that, which is never our intention originally. But we always wanted to be able to speak to the end user on the other side, and we wanted to do that creatively and colorfully. We wanted to do it in a way that's very expressive. We wanted design to speak for itself. And so we did this as a quick little souvenir project that we would give sort of friends and collaborators, and that was really well received. And this, of course, led to a couple of jobs, which was really interesting for us starting off. Obviously, really happy that we could, go around and spread this message of playful design. But I'll never really forget this phrase, which is playing around. And this was actually something that was thrown at us when we were producing a couple of our first installations. So we worked almost exclusively in the field of events at the beginning, because we were really interested in sort of like reaching out and trying to like celebrate this whole idea of like the design festival or the design party. And so we came up with a lot of ideas that, really came from deep down inside us. We were very passionate about, bright colors, being exuberant, being really joyful and playful in what we did. And it was in the process of making these. So this, what you see on the screen here is the arch for Toxic Wonderland, which was our first large scale installation at 100% design for the London Design Festival. And we made this 3-meter tall arch of with intention of, representing an architectural element. So here we had the classic, Renaissance arch, but we were going to do it in a different way. We're going to make it relatable in that we're going to try and recreate it in macrame. This beautiful idea of like, wow, we're going to make this 3-meter tall arch that's going to stand up there. It's going to be full of like yarn and macrame, and people are going to play with it, and it's going to be fun. Of course, we hadn't thought about health and safety per se, but the idea was there, and we knew that we wanted to do something incredibly fun and playful, and just really like involve, adults and children alike. And this was just such a great experience, just like being able to design something like that, and actually getting to see people interact with it. But I'll never forget really some of the feedback we received in the early days when we were crafting this experience and crafting this installation. And always when you tell someone, oh, I did architecture, I studied architecture in university, I finished my 5-year-long degree and master's program, then they're like, wow, you must be like, you must be crazy cool and all that. And then you say, well, this is what I want to do now. And you talk about playful design. And then they kind of come to you with this idea of like, oh, so you're playing around then, you're not really working, you're playing around. And I'll never forget that statement that was said to us. That was like, oh, so you guys are just playing around, you're not really working. We're like, no, like we're still working, we're still doing what we love, but we're working very hard at it, excuse me. And that was just like something that stuck with me a little bit throughout my journey here. And it's just a couple more pictures from the installation. And what was really good is we got to do what we loved, which was really like play around textures and materials and all that. And I think it was really well received, but always, there was a bit of that sense, that niggling sense of like, right, we're a small practice, we need to put our best foot forward, but how do we get taken seriously in industry? And that's a question that I still continuously to this day ask myself. Now, the next topic was not what we thought. And this is something that we've encountered a couple of times as designers, which is that, we often come up with ideas that we think, work really good. We try to communicate them as best as we can. And we put in a lot of effort into trying to make them come out on the other side as true as possible to the design. But what we hear a lot from clients sometimes is, oh, that's not what I thought I was going to get, or that's not what I thought it was going to look like. And that's something that, I just think, obviously we work really hard around it, and it really is like when we create something, we always try and be 100% into it. We put all our passion into it, and we really want to produce things that we're incredibly proud of. And when a client says that to us, we think about it, right? Okay, how can we fix it? How can we amend this? And this installation that you see here, so this was done in Newcastle as part of the Christmas installation that we did in city centre. And this was a really fun little thing. We thought we achieved a lot of the deliverables, which was, we were trying to get it interactive. We saw people playing around with it. There was people uploading it to social media. They were tagging, they were commenting. It was great. It was wonderful. It was really fun. And it really came about. But then at the same time, we always had a sense of like, how do we like visualize value for our clients? And that is something that to this day, like, is part of our practice as TAR. We're always rethinking about ourselves as a creative practice, and also as an industry, so that's such as creative practice industry practitioners. How can we better visualize what we do to the public? How can we better visualize what we do to the clients? And really, it's taken a lot of effort, a lot of soul searching here to sort of figure out, like, it's not always about the pretty picture at the end. It's not always about doing things to, a tight schedule or a tight budget. A lot of the times what we're trying to do is we're trying to reframe the service that we provide or the products that we produce into a mindset or a way of thinking about design where the value of it is really brought forward, because we could see that. So going back to my own experience with Epic Homes, with the projects in the jungles, it was that idea that we could help design something that provided a tangible benefit to not just ourselves, but to other communities, to this symbiotic relationship we all share as a community, a society that shares the same the same land, the same air, the same water. But how can design better visualize and better create a tangible benefit to our society? That is something that we have played around with for a long time, and we want to do it in a way that's really loud and celebratory. We want to be able to celebrate, segments of society that might feel underrepresented. We want to be able to better represent causes and voices that we feel are worthwhile. And that's something that we go moving forward in our very young journey. We just really want to put that at the core of what we do. And every project has to say something along those lines. We don't want to take on projects that do not fulfill that. So kind of the way that we've gone about that, and we've done some really strong thinking about this, is that obviously education needs to be there. And education is a big part of my practice, not just because I teach architecture at the University of Newcastle, but also because I think, at the basis of what we do, there needs to be better understanding of design as a whole. And I think the benefits that design brings to society perhaps have been a little bit sidelined. We need to probably put a bit more out there as designers into what we can do for society so they can see the value that we bring. There needs to be an educational process, so to speak, for it. One of the things that we did for that was to introduce TAR Talks. So talking to different collaborators, talking to different industries, different design practitioners really helped us. The picture that you see up here is a project that we did in collaboration with Louisa Treadwell, who is a fashion startup founder. And we brought her into the university to speak among all these young budding architects. And that was a really good collaboration that we did. We did a week-long collaboration with her where we eventually created this fun installation called Not for Instagram. Of course, that in itself had a lot of connotations. But we found that collaborative models be really, really fun and interesting and really inspiring for not just ourselves, but also the students that we work with a lot. Our work in education doesn't just stop there. We continuously are trying to find new opportunities to teach and try to educate, especially groups that might not usually benefit from a design education. So this comes back to my own experience as well. And I work with this other company called Investing that offers live internship opportunities for students across a really diverse range of professions. And through my work at Investing, we've been able to actually reach out and conduct workshops that also benefit students from underrepresented backgrounds in different sorts of industries and professions. And one of the professions that I want to personally sort of like encourage and take responsibility for a little bit here is architecture, the industry of architecture. As architects, we're very aware that there is a big problem and brewing behind the scenes. And we know that there is a lot of inequality in our profession. And that's something that we want to address. It's not a surprise to us that, a lot of people who are the top execs, for example, or people who work in the industry of architecture are from, pretty privileged backgrounds, and they come from really good schools and universities, and it makes sense, really. It's something that we know we need to change, and this needs to be an industry and a profession that better represents all other backgrounds, because when you are an architect, and if you're just talking about architect strictly in the sense of the word of an architect, when you're building buildings, when you're designing buildings for people, you need to think about every user out there, everyone who's using it. And often not, if the people who are designing these environments, we shape about 70% of the built environment around us. You know, if we're the ones designing for people, we can't just come from a very small minority. We can't just represent, you know, 10% or 15% of the population. We've got to represent every sector of the population. And that is something, that's why I believe personally, you know, especially myself, you know, being a minority in this country, like I think I do have a responsibility somewhat to speak for better representation in architecture education, or at least that's what I'm trying to do right now. I feel that encouraging students from underrepresented backgrounds, whether that be ethnic minorities, religious backgrounds, sexual minorities, and any really sort of like minority out there, needs to be better represented in education for architecture. We need to get more people graduating and qualifying to become architects from these backgrounds. We need to get more of the public informed actually about what we do, because there's also a really big disparity we feel between what the public perceives architecture as and what the value that we can offer as a profession. And there just needs to be better communication as a whole, because, you know, architects for so long, we've kind of sequestered ourselves. We kind of closed ourselves off, so to speak, from the other industries, perhaps design professionals as well. But we have kind of you know, sat in our own little chairs and just being like quite happy to do the work that we do. But actually, if we really think about it, I think we have a much greater responsibility than we realize sometimes, because in us shaping the built environment, there's so much that we are responsible for, and we have to work harder to make sure that the sort of the current climate, you know, where we are now as a society, you know, so much has changed in the last couple of years, and so much more is understood now about inequality, you know. I want to just echo the words of John Amaechi here, which is that, you know, inequality does not mean that you have worked, you know, less hard than someone else. You know, you probably, you know, if you're from a majority or if you're from a privileged background, you probably have put in a lot of hard work to get to where you are today. It's just being aware, I guess, more than anything else, that things might be different for other people, and that there is an imbalance and things might just be slightly more inconvenient for some other people, and trying to help empower those people to produce work that is beneficial to them, you know, trying to get them to speak up, and, you know, trying to get everyone onto the same level playing field. And that's something that I think we as architects have like a really big responsibility towards society. We need to do more on that side, and where that's going to start, at least on what I can do, what we can do as Tar Lab, what we can do is we can start educating students at a younger age. We can start bringing on board students from different backgrounds, you know, and offering them the opportunities to a design education.
Sorry, Carl, I think that's
so.
Sorry, just to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Really powerful what you've just been saying there. It's just an incredible outlook, both, you know, selflessly, you know, in what you're trying to do for other people. Obviously, it connects with education. And I think that, you know, some of the things that we've tried to kind of put out there through Design Week is showing that, you know, everybody's impact can have a little bit of a difference to make things better. So yeah, it really resonates with me what you've just said. I think it's really admirable, and, you know, I think it's amazing that you're on that quest to do that. So yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you said that, Owen. Thank you very much. Yeah, and just I think looking forward, I think where we want to go. Obviously, we're a really young company, and, you know, we're very lucky to have survived through these times. You know, it's trying times for everyone. And as we move forward into the future, we just really hope to be able to keep our feet on the ground. We never really want to be disconnected from the public. You know, we want to be able to do as much work on the ground in the field, so to speak, and really reflect the sort of feedback or the information, the knowledge that we're getting, the body of work. And I think this is something that is changing as a whole throughout the design industry. And you probably would agree with me in here, Owen, but I think this is something that we have a strong responsibility for. And perhaps this is something that we are just starting to understand the full impact of. And we realize that, you know, we have to be a lot more attached to the users of our environments as built environment practitioners. We have to have more of a connect to the users. We have to understand the problems that people are facing, because life is not getting necessarily easier for a lot of people out there. We need to anticipate the problems that they are having, and we need to be prepared to help design solutions. And these solutions, they don't have to be perfect solutions. I think that's a common misconception within architecture and other design fields as well, that we want to create things that are perfect and beautiful. But it's fine to create something that maybe is a bit imperfect. And I always tie this back to the experience I had with Epic, creating these homes in the jungles. A lot of times the workmanship was not great. But sometimes, in that imperfection, we were able to make things that truly worked and actually responded far better than we could ever have designed them to be. So having our feet on the ground is one way that we want to move forward and really just keep that connection going with people. And so this is the end of me now, and this was the end of that installation that I started off with. And I thought this was just a nice picture to start to end with. This was a great moment when we took down the installation. Of course, when we put up this particular arch, that was a massive undertaking, and you can see it was supported on these steel scaffolding poles. And at first, we were bringing in forklifts, we were bringing in 6 big burly men to help lift this up. But when it came down, it all came down so easy. And we just want to say that, obviously, everything that we try and build, is really easily undone. So we just want to keep the momentum going. We've worked really hard to get where we are today. And we just want to keep that momentum going and not stop really, and not lose sight of who we were before. And as we go into the future, hopefully, as long as, our passions will allow us, we're going to carry on spreading that message that we just spoke about. So thanks very much, Owen. Thank you for having me.
That's a pleasure, Karl. Thank you so much. I think your passion and enthusiasm for what you do really comes across, which also then equates into the work that you're doing. I think from looking at your website, I'd encourage people to go and have a look and check you out. I love the interdisciplinary kind of approach that you've got. And when we first chatted a few months ago now, that's the thing that really kind of encapsulated what you're doing and how you're doing it. I love the fact that you're trying to bridge those gaps, not only with the people on the ground, the public, people who are interacting on a day-to-day basis from whatever walk of life, and then you're looking at really playful ways to create solutions for potentially challenging problems. So really fascinating. Thank you so much for your time today, Karl. You're a very busy person, so appreciate you taking the time out, and the fact that you're doing both the educational stuff academically with students, so inspiring next generations, but also with your professional practice. It's great to understand a bit more about what you do. So thank you for that. Just to follow on, we're asking questions of everybody who, I'm just looking at my other screen as I talk, but we're asking everybody who have kindly come on the Sunday Sessions Talk series to answer some questions that we've got linked to our themes of York Design Week this year. So hopefully, Karl, you can, in any way that you like, you can answer these questions that I'm just going to pose to you before we wrap up. So the first one is to do with activism and being an activist. Do you see yourself as an activist? If so, what is the one thing that you would like to change?
Yeah, I would say I see myself as an activist, but I think activism sometimes has a very strong connotation that perhaps is a bit scary to someone. I think you can be an activist in a subtle sense, but you can also speak really loudly with subtle actions. And I think, through the work that we do in education, we're trying very much to change that, as we spoke earlier. I think the one thing that I would want to change, and I probably have the most capacity for at the moment, is education, really. And I think I feel very, very passionately about that. I think everyone should have the opportunity to design education, because the work that we do as designers for so long, it has served, I guess, people with the means to afford designers before. And maybe that's not, maybe that's not the best or the most eloquent way to put it, but I think as designers, we need to ensure that our work reaches all levels of society. And I think one of the things that that I've personally been lucky enough to be involved in with my capacity with investing, as I mentioned earlier, with the professional internship programs. Through it, obviously, as I said earlier, the careers and employability workshops for students from underrepresented backgrounds. That is a big thing for me, and that's something I really would love to get involved with more. I was recently involved with the RIBA Northeast, so that's Royal Institute of British Architects talk series in the Northeast here, so representing Newcastle, I guess, a little bit. And big shout out to Grace Choi for inviting me onto that. But through those platforms, I've managed to speak to a lot of really inspirational architects. Sumita Singha, who recently ran for RIBA president as well and champions the cause of diversity within the profession of architecture. Yemi Aladarun, who I've managed to meet through Investing, has done really, really inspiring work for Black female architects down in London. I just think, it's a much smaller world than we used to live in before. And it has to be the case where we start taking strong actions. We speak strongly with our actions, really, towards changing practice and making those improvements where we can see right now.
Yeah, I think, well, you're being very inspiring right now. I think it's great that you're interacting and engaging with people who also inspire you, that can, have an impact, in a more wider sense. But you're so right. It's the small things that build into the bigger things. I think that, yeah, absolutely resonates, and really inspiring. So thank you for that. Going on to play. Play has been shown to release endorphins, improve brain functionality, and stimulate creativity. But there is often a misconception that play is only for children as part of growing up. But how do you play?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, Owen. Thanks for that. As we said before, like, one of the things that really struck through with me from a very early stage in our practice was that, are you playing, or are you just playing around? Are you how can we do that? And I think as creators, we're always kind of looking for moments of play. We're always trying to look for ways that we can express our playful side. And I think that's really important that we do that actually as creatives. And the work that we do often touches different sectors of society. Through playful design, I think we help ground the users of our spaces. We help ground our users to the idea that life is not all about the slog and the work and all that. Remind yourselves to play all the time. And this is something I'm telling myself right now as well, that you have to take some time out to play. And it's really important that I think we remember that, just as much as we're all working towards a better future, but play is also in itself really formative of characteristics, like IQ and things like academic excellence and all that are related to playful learning. So how I would play personally, I think I think my work is play, really, Owen. I struggle to answer that because actually, just by nature of who I am, I think I really do find moments to play around in my work a lot. And I think that's one of the things that we're very lucky as creators, is that we get to have opportunities to play around with work. And to anyone who is considering a creative career, I think it's very well suited to you, especially if you never feel like maybe that you might have fit in, and traditionally in an academic sense. I definitely wasn't that student. I think sometimes we designers, we have the most troubled childhood, so to speak, because we're always chasing this idea of academic excellence. But then actually, when you come on the other side, when you're working, we find ways to play that I think we create tangible outcomes out of it. We literally visualize play as real things. And I think that's just why I feel incredibly lucky to have landed into this profession.
Yeah, but clearly you've worked hard for that. And I think that, in terms of, it's a funny thing, isn't it? I think I've used the word luck. You know, we have to work hard to get to where we've got to. But you're so right. The boundaries of our profession bleed very easily into the day-to-day lives, and you know, we have that joy and playfulness that we bring to our work as creatives. You know, you don't stop. Most people say, oh, well, there's a lot of people that say they might not be creative, but our job is to unlock that creativity in people's minds and bring them joy through that whole experience. And I think that, you know, sometimes even through education, that joy and playfulness can get squashed a little bit, and it's being able to open it up to, yeah, lots of people. But yeah, I think your work clearly shows that playfulness that you have. So yeah, it's very evident. Rewild. How do you like to rewild and reconnect with nature and the green space around you?
So this is an interesting one for me. I guess because as architects, sometimes we do enjoy the built environment, maybe perhaps a bit too much. But I find nature to be something that, me personally, where I'm based in the Northeast, we're very lucky, very accessible to nature. I live close to a couple of public parks, and that's great. I think it's difficult because, you know, as more and more people move into cities, you know, we're looking at ways that we can reconnect with nature, though they may not be the most natural of ways. You know, you start to think about where the boundary is between, you know, what is natural and what is artificial. You know, like I'd say bringing a potted plant into a room, you know, can help increase, you know, mood levels and so on. But then you have to be aware as well that that plant doesn't belong in a pot, and you've taken it out of an environment where it was growing and thriving, and then you've put it in there. I think, as you know, I think as architects, and you know, as you know, people who alter the built environment, we need to probably look at letting nature be a little bit more. And this to me is sort of like, this speaks more to my design ethos, perhaps, that my own design ethos, in that I don't particularly feel that, you know, if something is doing really well, if something is thriving, I don't feel like, you know, we have to change it. And I think this perhaps, you know, because nature's complicated. Nature, we are part of nature as well. You know, we are not artificial beings. We're not made from metal and bits and bobs, you know. I think we need to kind of come to an understanding as a society that we are a part of nature, we are part of the ecosystem. And perhaps when we start to understand our role in this environment, when we start to understand how we're tied into the planet, we're tied into, you know, the land and the trees and the earth around us, when we have a better, you know, societal understanding of that, we are going to treat the environment better, and we will also treat ourselves better. Perhaps as a society, we'll be healthier. We will learn how to, you know, not create, you know, big large amounts of waste. And I think we are getting there. Like, we're learning more and more with all the activism that's happened recently. But I think, you know, we could certainly do a lot more and be better as a society.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you mentioned public spaces. You know, we're so used to having things on our doorstep that we almost take for granted, but actually there could be more. But there's going to have to be innovation brought in to bring nature and I suppose that wild ecosystem that you're talking about, that we're part of, closer to people's homes and lives, because there are places that just don't have it. It's an intriguing kind of challenge that we're in. I think, you know, as children going back to play, and as you're growing up, you touch and you feel and explore, and then over time you might not do that. You might just get into the 9 to 5 routine, and you don't see and interact with nature. You know, one of the things with lockdown is that we were forced to get out and do a bit of exercise every day and get some fresh air, go to a park, get on the bike, go and find a new trail somewhere. And I think that that's really helped in lockdown, to maybe see how people can better their lives through nature, which is really exciting. Space.
Definitely. And
sorry, go on.
I was just going to add to you one of the things that so from my academic work, so from my teaching, I've got to interact with a lot of students, a lot of students finishing their GCSEs, and because of the program that I'm involved in, we conduct it over Zoom, which is arguably one of the greatest COVID innovations ever. And what I'll say is that there's a lot of hope I have in the younger generation to better understand their relationship with nature. I think a lot of the students that come in now, and this goes back to like what I said earlier about the work that we do, we often go into environment thinking like, oh, we're going to bring value to them, we're going to try and help improve them. But actually it's a two-way street. And really everything that we think we are going to teach them, they can also teach us something about. So I think that hope that I have in the future generation, to improve our perspective of play and of nature and of activism, it's already there. And I have a lot of promise in the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Going on to space now, we don't see space as a physical place. People make spaces. Mm-hmm. What spaces have you created this year, and what space have you found makes you happiest?
This is a challenging one for me, Owen, because obviously we deal with built spaces, so particularly difficult for me to answer this one. But I think the space that I've created for myself or the people around me that I enjoy the most is just the kind of work that we have been able to do at the company. Because I think, in a sense, that what we do inhabits a certain mental space. And I think what we do, we always try to be playful, we always try to be strong, and we always try to be active in the work we do at TALAB. And recently we've actually had the joy of employing another intern into our workfold, and being able to share that environment. So as we grow as a company, and as we are able to spread our message of playful design, I think that mental space of inhabiting, and with the education as well, teaching more students that design or even architecture, because there is that common misconception that what architects do is perhaps very logical or very boring, or we're all concerned with costs and feasibility studies, and it's a part of what we do. They're not entirely wrong, but there is a whole playful aspect to it that is really important as well. And I think sometimes when we go and spread this message of playful design, when we go and talk to people and we teach students, or we educate clients, or we just speak at events such as this one, Owen, we help spread the message that design is really there to help people, and design is there to help you, remind you to play, and it reminds you about what's valuable in life. And that mental space, I think, perhaps, is the most precious thing that I have designed at all throughout my professional career.
That's a beautiful answer. I think you probably should give yourself a bit more of that mental space because you're so busy in doing what you're doing. But I think that clearly, again, just going back to, how you portray yourself, to me and others, I think the work that you do, clearly there's a lot going on, and it's beautiful to be able to listen to the way that you speak about things, because there's clearly a lot of thought that goes into it. So yeah, that's really great to hear. Two more just, I suppose, quick questions. So trust, another theme. What do you trust in?
What do I trust in? I trust in a lot of people around me. I think, a lot of where I've gotten today is just, the support that I've got from my partner, my parents, everybody who's around me, my friends and all that. And really, that I don't really ever want to abuse that. So I think that's something I do trust in. The people I surround myself with, really.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think it seems to be riding quite high with people when we've asked this question. So I think it goes back to that humanity thing and being human, and that we need people, but also that we do put a lot of trust in the people who are close to us, and we like to build those relationships. So yeah, that's lovely to hear. And then finally, Karl.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I was going to add in, that's been a tough one during COVID, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Us being locked in all the time. It's definitely been a tough one, but I think we've all learned the value of the people closest to us during these times, actually.
Yeah.
And that's something very valuable.
Yeah, very much agree with that. So, yeah. And then finally, thank you for your patience, but share is the final theme. October the 10th was Mental Health Awareness Day, and we've seen a lot of campaigns around keeping the conversation going this year. This year has been very isolating for many people. Have you had to learn new ways of sharing and opening up?
Yes, definitely. I think I've learned that it's important to share more of yourself, especially with the people around you. So relating back to the last question, it's really important you share as much of yourself with people around you, because oftentimes, you know, when we're in these special situations and we're working the way we are, you know, we're not in, you know, I know a lot of people I've talked to in the last couple of months, you know, we have grudges about the environments that we live in. You know, we're sequestered into our tiny little boxes, our living and working and breathing boxes. And I think we're in a weird sense, perhaps, to look on the bright side. I'm an optimist about this kind of thing, Owen. So I always try, if I can, to look on the bright side of this. But the bright side about the last couple of months is that, if anything, we've all had to learn one way or the other how to share. And we really need to look down. We need to look inside ourselves, and we need to, you know, like we said earlier, like we need to keep our feet on the ground and really look inside us and see what really matters to us. And if I want to share, you know, sort of the good work or the luck that I've had so far with people around me, you know, I need to be able to open myself up to that sharing experience. And that is actually quite a tough one for me. Or when, if you know me, I'm not usually, even though, you know, I am perhaps, you know, I'm quite easygoing when I talk and I behave, but, you know, just by virtue of my culture and so on, I've not always been the easiest person to share things with. And just learning, you know, from the people around me that is really important, I think has been one of the greatest survival tactics, really, during lockdown.
I think it shows your vulnerability. You know, I think that's a really wonderful thing. It's a positive. I think that there's something very special in the fact that both talking about it, but also, you know, understanding that can open up opportunities to talk in a more kind of open way with different people, and you can learn better. You can understand people better, so there's empathy of individual circumstances. So yeah, I think all that you've said today has really resonated and inspired me. I hope it's inspired a lot of the people who have logged on to listen to you. I really would encourage people to go and check out your work on your website. So I think if I'm right, do correct me, tarlabdesign.com.
It's actually Tar Design Lab, so that's TAdesignlab.com, but very nearly there, Owen.
Sorry, hopefully Google will still pick that up. But Karl, thank you. I really appreciate your time. Laura and Millie, who have worked with me very hard on curating the Sunday sessions, also are very grateful. It's been great to have you as part of York Design Week this year. Thank you so much. And yeah, everybody, Karl Mok, thank you.
Thank you very much, Owen. This is a wonderful experience, and I hope everyone enjoys it.